that espouse the original doctrines of the Apostolic Church is typical throughout history. We find the same thing happening to the German Seventh-day Baptists in the 1700s. Going back, we find that the Eckerlin brothers from Strasbourg, who also had Paulician influences, even if tradition is exact, were members of the Bektashi order. The four brothers came with their mother to Pennsylvania and eventually founded the Ephrata cloisters along with Conrad Beissel. Peter Miller joined the movement. Peter Miller came from the Reformed Church. He was a Trinitarian. Ephrata had not been Trinitarian at all before Peter Miller came. Peter Miller flattered Conrad Beissel and inspired a wedge between Conrad Beissel and the Eckerlin brothers. The Eckerlins were very effective people. They had good business sense. They had created mills. They had a paper mill. They made their own paper. The Ephrata cloisters were very influential in colonial Pennsylvania, and the influence even spread to other colonies. They had the first press in America. They had a grain mill, grist mill. They had a school for boys. The Ephrata cloister was a very important central place in the American colonies. When Peter Miller got control of things, the first thing he did was to oust the Eckerlins, and they were ousted according to the Chronicon because of their Ishmaelite faith, that is, their Unitarian stand. The writings of the Eckerlins have all been burned by Peter Miller and his followers. So we have really only the record of the opposition, and there's a manuscript that was found in Ephrata in the 1800s that was also in opposition to Peter Miller that tells us more about the Eckerlins. And from these two sources we note that the Eckerlins, of course, were Sabbatarian. They were Unitarian, moderate Unitarian. Their Ishmaelite faith shows that clearly. Israel Eckerlin instituted Old Testament practices. All of Ephrata followed the Bible food laws, but Israel Eckerlin in fact made himself a priestly robe, like the high priest's robe, with a breastplate with all of the stones in it, and he officiated at all of the important events in that robe. Apparently, although we have no written documentation, this would include the annual feasts. So Peter Miller, first of all, ousted the Eckerlins. Then he destroyed the grist mill, the paper mill, the school, all of the means of support, on the grounds that the Eckerlins had been carnal. And so we have to get rid of carnal things. He brought in the Trinity, and he ran the Ephratite community into the ground. In only a few decades it had disappeared. The German Seventh-day Baptists today are Trinitarian. So this infiltration of enemies into the church is very typical. If we go to the Seventh-day Baptists in the preceding century, just a few decades earlier, the Newport Church, the first Seventh-day Baptist church in America. From that church came the Rogers family joined the church. John Rogers joined the church. He was living in New London, and the Newport church was some distance away. And so Newport was in Rhode Island, New London is in Connecticut. The Martha's Vineyard Church was established. Martha's Vineyard Church was established in 1685, less than a score of years after the Newport Seventh-day Baptist Church was established. And John Rogers became the first pastor there. They got along very well until a Quaker visitor from England visited them and infiltrated them with other doctrines, and eventually they gave up the Sabbath, and the Rogerine Church continued to exist up into the early 1800s, but they had given up the Sabbath through infiltration. And they had had a very strong witness for the Sabbath in the beginning. Going back even earlier to England, we find that Daniel Katz, I believe is his name, David Daniel Katz, wrote a book about the Sabbatarians in England. It's published at the Jerusalem University Press, and he gives extensive documentation about the 17th century Sabbatarians in England. Documents the group that was established before Millyard, that went to the continent and finally disappeared. These people were also observers of the annual feasts and other biblical practices, and they finally disappeared, we know not how. But he also documents the infiltration of the Jesuits in the 1600s in the Baptist churches. Not only Seventh-day Baptist, but Baptist. Some of the Jesuits who were infiltrating the churches were caught. I suppose people would like to believe that all of them were caught. I somehow doubt that. The infiltration was apparently, obviously I would say, successful. But there was a Seventh-day Baptist church in York. A man came to the church claiming to be a Jew, and he wanted to convert to Christianity, and he wanted to join the Seventh-day Baptist Church in York. And after all sorts of interesting events, it came out that the man was a Jesuit. He was, of course, the Jesuits were founded for the purpose of infiltrating Protestantism. That was the purpose of the order. I can't imagine why anyone would doubt that they would not act on the purpose for which they were actually founded. Well, in any case, this man turned out to be a Jesuit, and he was also turned out of the church. How many more were not discovered is shown by the fact that the Baptist churches, in every statement of faith that has ever been written, insofar as I know, have expressed a belief in the Trinity, despite the fact that so many of the early Baptists were Unitarian, at least moderate Unitarian, and some even radical Unitarians. So we find that this way of relating to the true faith has been one of watching. Whenever a church or group arises that is keeping the Sabbath, that is moderate Unitarian, that's following the feasts, that's following the food laws, that believes in eternal grace, these various factors come together in a group. The more of these factors that are present, the faster the group is infiltrated.